All right. Welcome back to the Mindful Hunter podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jay Nickel. This is episode number 22. I'm here with my buddy, Adam, who goes by the name 4 Point Outdoors on Instagram. And we're just going to have a bit of a bullshit. And we're going to talk about hunting. We were just kind of gabbing before I hit record. And I think the goal here is give a little bit of Adam's background, how he got into hunting, why he does it, what he likes about it, what he gets out of it. Maybe tell a couple hunting stories if they come up organically. And then maybe dive into some blacktail hunting tactics, and then maybe close out with some tips for the LEH, seeing as that's kind of what's on everybody's mind these days. So first of all, Adam, thanks, man. Really appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me on. This is awesome.
So funny story, we actually met through binoculars.
We did, yeah.
Yeah, I was selling a pair of Zeiss Conquests, and Adam hit me up, pretty aggressively negotiated me down a couple bucks, and we met. And it was funny because you'd actually watched my review on YouTube that I did of the binoculars, and then ended up adding each other on Instagram afterwards. And I was like, holy shit, man, like, dude is legit. Like, you to me are like that quintessential BC hunter. Like if somebody didn't know you, you'd have no way of knowing that. And I don't want to blow you up too hard and make you feel uncomfortable, but like, you've done some really phenomenal, like homegrown BC hunting. Like, you've kind of spanned a few different species, and you wouldn't know it to know you. Like, it's not like the defining characteristic. You don't feel the need to like yell it from the rooftops. I think you've got I really like the vibe and the kind of ethos of your Instagram, but you're not like trying to get sponsored or throwing up videos all the time. Like it's like you're an understated homegrown BC hunter is what I would say.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And yeah, like I started that Instagram page. It's only been like a year and a bit.
Okay.
More so just to like keep a timeline of everything.
Right.
And kind of just share what I'm doing out there.
So let's set some context now. How old are you now?
I'm 33.
Okay. And what, do you come from a hunting family?
My dad hunted. He grew up in Saskatchewan and then moved to BC when I was like 1. Okay. So like my hunting upbringing, I always heard the stories of like them bow hunting in the sand fields of Saskatchewan and the Sand Hills story and stuff like that, and all the big deer that they saw and everything like that. And then we were big into archery when I was growing up. So I did lots of archery competitions and tournaments and things like that. And then started whitetail hunting with my bow with my dad. That was like my first kick at hunting.
And have you guys always been in the valley, or were you somewhere else first?
Yeah, pretty much always in the valley. Yeah, pretty much growing up in Chilliwack my whole life. And so we'd travel kind of all over and do the whitetail thing with like in December after rifle season closed with our bow.
Yep.
And I mean, I shot like one spike buck, and everything else, like the does were open for archery then. And that's we just kind of went and filled the freezers. And that's really all I had for hunting growing up. And it was truck hunting, right? It was December. I was young. So drive around, see a deer, try and make a play like with archery.
So you wouldn't even stand hunt. You were literally like road hunting type of deal.
Pretty much. Yeah. Like, and then we did some, like we'd walk and stuff like that. But again, I was pretty young. Like that was like my right start getting into hunting. And then once I kind of got a little bit older, I went away for work and a bunch of things and kind of didn't really hunt much up till I'd probably say 8 years ago, kind of started getting back into it. And at that, like I did a backpack alpine mule deer hunt, and that was my first time backpacking, first time everything. And I managed to get a 4-point muley in the velvet.
Man.
And since then, it's just been kind of all I want to do. Just the adventure part of it, right? Like the backpacking.
So how did that, because what I hear a lot from people, so my background is a forestry engineer. So when I went to do my first backpack hunt, it didn't really seem that intimidating to me because I'd spent a lot of time in the mountains. But what I get the most from people is like, that's a big leap if you've never spent a lot of time in the mountains. So how difficult did you find, and maybe because you spent some time with your dad, you also felt like it wasn't like that, but talk me through like even some of the psychological challenges or the gear challenges. Like how difficult was that first true alpine hunt to go and do?
I was with a buddy who had done it maybe once before.
Okay.
And he just kind of like, he never got one, but he did like a scouting trip kind of thing. And the first time it was like, yeah, like I had my backpack that I used when I went to Thailand for a couple months, and I just like rounded up some gear that was probably all way too heavy and nowhere near good enough for what we were doing. And we hiked up it took us, when it was 6 or 8 hours to hike into where we wanted to go. And that night, it was the day before the opener, glassed up some bucks and went to sleep and woke up and went and got one. And looking back on it, like, did everything wrong. Like, from how we were glassing to where we camped to, like, once the deer was down, like I said, it's probably 10 years before that I shot my last deer.
Right.
And my buddy, he'd done a little bit of hunting, but like, we didn't know what we were doing at all. Like, we ended up bringing the deer into the bush. We literally had some rope. We cut it in half and we knew we had to bone it out, but had no idea how to. So we just like started hacking off meat, filled the game bags. Like, we just made sausage with it. So like nothing went to waste, but there was no roast if you wanted one. Like, we had no idea what we were doing. And packed it down with camp. And it was hard and it hurt. And then I just remember, like, when we got back to where we parked his side-by-side, it was just like that. It was just so cool to have like completed something, like, and it's that, like, the adventure part that like drives it.
100%, man. See, I love this story for a couple of reasons, because in addition to hunting, like, I like working out and training, and I find in both areas, people, like younger people who are just getting into it, get so focused on shit that doesn't actually matter. And if you just go do something, do you know what I mean? Like, just go figure it out. But I almost feel like there's this hesitation from people these days because they want everything to be perfect, or they want to know all, like, oh yeah, but what are the perfect boots? And it's like, it doesn't matter. Just put on a pair of boots. Yeah, you might get some blisters. You're going to go through 3 pair of boots before you even find out what boots you like anyways. So and I just love the fact that you were just like, yeah, man, let's just do it. Because that's the best way to start learning how to do all this stuff anyways.
Absolutely. And then it makes, like, I'm definitely a gear junkie. I'm buying and selling gear all the time and like always looking for what's better. But having done it with gear that's not made for it, like carrying 80, 90, 100 pounds in a cheap backpack that I used in Thailand, and like knowing how, like, what that felt like, to now like having a good pack that's meant to haul weight, it just, you kind of shows you everything about it, right?
Yeah. Okay. So that's like 8-9 years ago.
Yeah.
That first alpine hunt. So where do we go from there?
From there, like, we kept trying, and we definitely, it was mostly mule deer focused. And then springtime, it was like, get out of the house, let's go bear hunting.
Yeah.
So I have got a couple of bears, and they were like mostly kind of close to roads. Like in the springtime, you're in the bottom, right? Because every deer or every animal I've ever shot, except for a bear, has come out in my pack. I've never shot a deer that I didn't have to like backpack out.
Okay.
So from there, it was just like more deer, more alpine deer. And then decided after a while, like, started hearing about some buddies that were doing sheep hunts, and me and actually the same guy that I've done all these hunts with, we went up and decided we were going to go stone sheep hunting. Did a bunch of research, and kind of, again, like, all our gear had upgraded for sure, but like neither one of us had really had a good grasp on how to sheep hunt. And that's probably my biggest, I'll probably never have luck like that again. We went up and hiked in.
And this is just an over-the-counter tag, or did you have a draw?
Nope, just over-the-counter tag. We both bought sheep tags and drove up north.
You just walked in?
Yeah, we just parked and hiked in.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it.
It was, I got off a night shift and we left, and 24 hours later we were hiking. And then on the next day, which would have been our first full day of the hunt, spotted a ram. So first full day, first stalk, and I shot my stone sheep.
Oh my God.
And,
so first we got the deer that you basically wake up and shoot. And now we got the sheep. So you basically have a horseshoe stuck up your ass.
I think it's gone now. Like that, there's no way that can continue. But yeah, and the sheep was busted off halfway on one side. I have photos of it there on my page, but the other side, he was broomed off. So it was a super scary one, because I did tons of research on how to age rams and everything. And my biggest thing was, I don't want to be the guy that shoots an illegal ram. Like, I want a ram really bad, but more than that, I do not want to shoot one that wasn't legal. And the way this stalk worked out, I shot him at 45 yards and had him in the spotting scope, counted. He had 10 rings left on his one side. So I counted like so many times. And so I took him, and it was awesome. The biologist figured he was between 12 and 13 because he groomed off so far. And the other side, like he was completely broken halfway up. So I knew he wasn't full curl. Yeah. So it was a pretty scary first ram, but things like that.
It's funny. I was just mentioning this when we hopped on, but for anybody listening, the last podcast will have been one I did with Clay Lancaster. And for anybody who doesn't know, Clay is guided and taken somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 sheep. Wow. So Clay and his brother Jim own Nahanni Butte Outfitters in the NWT. And I think they have something like, it's like 2 million acres or something. Like it's insane. Like part of it was taken for a provincial park, and there's still enough of it left that you wouldn't be able to stand in one place and see it all. Like it's a significant portion of the province. Like it's a gigantic tract of land, and they do sheep, goat, moose, caribou, and that might be it. But the whole Lancaster family, they've got Copper River Outfitting, and then I know Bart Lancaster has another outfit, and then Clay also guides sheep in Mexico in the winter. And he's kind of widely regarded, I would say, as if he's not one of the most widely regarded kind of aging experts, he is the guru of sheep aging. So the Wild Sheep Society of British Columbia just had their big annual conference, and it was online. And Clay was good enough to basically do this 45-minute, hour-long video on how to age sheep. And because I'm going on my first sheep hunt this summer, I wanted to. This is my concern, man. And what I've learned since doing this, and it's funny because I think you voiced the same thing, maybe even without recognizing what you were voicing. There's this. I'm going out and I want my first sheep. And some of what I hear from people is like, I want to be able to age sheep so that I can increase my opportunity by taking as many sheep as possible right down to the edge. Like I want to be able to call that 8-year-old or see that guy that just breaks full curl by a 1/4 inch so I can have the greatest opportunity of taking a sheep. And what I really took away from the conversation with Clay is we got to be thinking differently about it. And I think this is how you were thinking about it. We should be trying to take the oldest, maturest rams that we possibly can. Like we have a responsibility as hunters. Like we're the ones who are going to dictate what the sheep population looks like moving forward for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And the way we're going to do that is by thoughtful selection of the sheep that we kill. And so that's the other thing I'm trying to kind of wrap my head around first. Like, I really want to come home with a sheep, but like, I don't need to be able to take in some barely legal thing. And Clay was pretty cool. He's like, listen, to anybody who's listening, if it's your first sheep, I don't care what you kill. As long as it's legal, go nuts, go to town, party. It's those guys that go out like 2 to 3 years and they bring back the like just barely legal ram 2-3 times in a row. And he made a really good point. It's like, what are you doing? Like, you're not making it any more difficult for yourself. You're not contributing to the health of the population. Anyways, I don't mean to go on a big rant about that, but it's just, it's so respectful that, I mean, it's impressive that you killed a sheep on your first time, but then to have it to be such a mature ram, like, I just think that's like a whole other level to it. Killing something just barely legal, while it's totally acceptable and legal, and if you're early on in your career, it's like a spike buck. If I was taking a new hunter out and he wanted to shoot a spike buck and it's legal in the regs, fill your boots, man. I totally support that. The bios think that this population can support having some spike bucks killed, then go ahead. But like, am I going to go out and shoot a spike buck? I'm not. It's just not something that interests me personally.
Yeah, for sure. No, that makes perfect sense. And then last year, we went sheep hunting again and had a group of 3 7-year-olds in front of me, super wide. Like I got to within 400 yards of them, sat there with the spotting scope, and they just weren't like, I couldn't confidently call it, right? Yeah. And then there was one there that was double broomed, and I could count 7 for sure, and I was pretty sure he broomed 1 or 2 rings off, but I didn't know if like those count or do they not. Like I didn't know, so like we didn't do anything about it. And then you come home and you show people that have done it a lot more, and they're like, "Oh, that one's legal, that one's legal," and you're like, "Oh man!" But in the moment, like if you're not sure, you can't do it.
I have so much more respect for the guy who brings back a picture and said, I don't know, man. I didn't want to take a chance, and they've got a half a dozen legal sheeps than the guy who maybe shoots that accidental one. I actually sent an email to Bill Jex, who I think is like the head bio for Northern BC, because I was going to have him come on, but Clay came on instead. Anyways, what I want to ask him is, and maybe you know do you have any idea how many underage rams get taken every year?
I don't have I
don't have any idea either. Somebody told me it's on the rise, and it wouldn't surprise me with the kind of increase of presence of social media and how pressured everybody is these days to like throw up a picture on Instagram. Like I could see people being a little bit less discerning, trying to bring something down, and then after the fact finding out. And here's an interesting thing I just learned. Okay, so for a thin horn ram, which is primarily what we're going to be shooting with over-the-counter tags, because it's stone sheep, and most of our over-the-counter, well, I guess is all our over-the-counter is stones, isn't it? Or can we do
no, you can. There's California in region 3 and like the Kamloops Lake. That's all LEH, but there is regions that are open season, but it's full curl on the bighorn. So it's super hard. Like you hear a couple get taken every year in the province that like you hear about, but guys spend a lot of time. And
and I hear a lot of the outfitters get them too, because they're the ones who are kind of like scouting them and sitting on them all year. So then when the season opens, they know where those rams are, and everybody else is kind of playing.
And I think they have some 3/4 curl tags too. Like that's what the LEH is, because some of those bighorns, they broom so much that they'll never get full curl. Yeah. So you can have a huge, massive ram that's only 3/4. So that's what the LEH tags for there, I think.
Right, totally. And again, 3/4 curl, as long as the thing is like 9, 10, 11 years old, like who gives a shit if the curl comes all the way around? Like that's a mature ram and you should feel good about taking it. But one of the interesting things about the regulation, so for a thin horn, for the listeners, that would be a stone sheep or a doll sheep. To be considered for a full curl, you have to physically break the plane of the nose. For a bighorn, you only have to break the line between the nostril and the eyeball, and the nose goes kind of up and over, so you don't actually have to break it. But one of the things I found out this week is that some thin horns, instead of coming down and like coming straight out and breaking full curl, they will come back in. And if they come back in and almost think about it, making a full circle and pointing back into the base of the horn, because that doesn't technically break the plane of the nose, that's not a full curl ram. So if that ram is 7 years old and he curls back into his eye, they're going to take your sheep.
Right.
Yeah. So I thought that was, which is even more kind of like more of a good reason to like, instead of trying to shoot something barely legal, like if you're like, oh, is it 7? Is it 8? I'd rather be like, you saw, like I can see 10. Like, listen, this is a sheep that I can shoot with a clear conscience. I've heard so many people that walk from when they pull the trigger, like walking that 400 yards over the sheep is like the longest. It's like last mile going to a death sentence. Like it's just brutal.
Oh, same as mine. Like I said, I counted multiple times, and the first thing I did, like I wasn't like, oh, this is awesome. I'm like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And you're counting. And if I didn't have, like I said, and I was a new sheep hunter, I still am. If I didn't have 10, like even if I could count 9, you hear like the false rings, all that, like I would just feel horrible. So I had for sure 10, and they were all real. So I was like, well, I got a little wiggle room here if one of those is fake. Like a false ring, sorry. So
that's awesome.
It's a game all in itself. Like there's so much to learn with every species.
So let's transition a little bit to Blacktail, because that's kind of like a little bit closer to home for both of us. What's your what's your experience and what's your thoughts on Blacktail? Because I find like everybody knows mule deer and everybody hunts mule deer, and I get it. I like hunting mule deer too. But to me, the Blacktail are like a even though I know they're not a totally different animal, they also are a totally different animal. Like the areas that they live in and the way they behave, like to me, they're such a more difficult animal to hunt. And I don't want to be like ethnocentric about it and say like one animal's better than another, but I don't know. There's just something about blacktail hunting to me. And you kind of got to be from the lower mainland to get it. But yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit just about blacktail in general.
Yeah, it's part of it started with my schedule. Like I have some time off during the week. I have a rotating schedule. So to do these big mule deer hunts, that like requires a hunting partner and like a couple of days. And then I started like learning, and like you've probably heard of Pro Guide 66.
Oh yeah.
Steve Isdale.
Yeah.
I probably pronounced his last name wrong, but found him on like Hunting BC a long time ago when he was talking about blacktails, and it just like, I was kind of like, wow, that is cool. And then started like trying to blacktail hunt. And once I started, it was, like I said, it's like no other type of hunting. You'll hunt for 5, 6, 7 days, like not in a row. Like I kind of go and then I go back to work or whatever, but not even see a deer. And you talk to a lot of people and they just quit because it sucks. Like the terrain sucks. It's always raining. It's steep. Like there's nothing comfortable about it, but it's nice when you can do it in a day trip because you go out, you get soaked, you suck it up, and you come home and dry out.
Yeah.
Like a week-long blacktail hunt out of a backpack would be that would be a test. I don't know how. Like I said, I only ever day hunt them. I haven't done an overnight blacktail hunt. But just started learning about them, and then I kind of got the trail cam bug. Which, I mean, I know there's different thoughts on trail cameras and stuff, but I've never shot a blacktail that's been even within a kilometer of my cameras. But the thing that I love about the cameras is you go check them and you're like, there's actually deer here.
Yeah.
Whereas if some of the spots that I hunt, if I didn't have trail cameras, I like the one buck that I got this last year, didn't have on camera for the last 4 years. I've never seen him. And most of those bucks, and like in the start, the first couple of years, I'd get all these deer on trail camera, never even lay eyes on any of them. Like didn't see a buck all year. And then you kind of like learn some things and do some more research, and like, it's all about wind. It's all about like, and you can't pattern them. Like they're never, just because you see it in this spot today, tomorrow it's on the other side of the mountain. So it's so hard and tricky, I think is what really draws me to it.
I think people underestimate how nocturnal blacktail are compared to other deer species.
Oh yeah. And until you get,
and you know that through the trail cam footage, like you will get all these nighttime pictures, and like maybe early season, you'll get a few like day, but like as soon as like September kind of rolls around, it's like the day pictures are just done.
Yeah. Even in the like summer, very few daytime pictures, and then all hunting season, none. And then you might get lucky in like the first 2 weeks of November and catch one walking by the camera. But yeah, everything's nighttime pictures, which is, it's crazy how that makes it so difficult, right?
Yeah, it's so hilarious, your story. And I had no idea what got you into it, but it mimicked mine identical. I used to be able to like take a Thursday off work, and I was living in Fort Langley, and I'd kind of head out behind Chilliwack up into the mountains. And the other thing that I loved, like it gave me the feeling of a backpack hunt in like a day.
Absolutely.
Because as soon as you get a quarter mile off any of those like logging roads, you might as well be up in Fort Nelson or something. Like you just zero sign of civilization. You can't hear anything. You can't see anything. And it's like, it gave me that feeling of like separation from everything. And when I came out at the end of the day, it almost felt like I was coming back to the world after a backpack hunt. Like you really get that psychological break.
Absolutely. And like I said, and with the blacktails, like I've never seen one on the road. Like I quad up, and like, if I can only have time for a half day hunt, I like take the bolt out of my rifle, put my gun lock on, stop at the mountain when I get back to the quad, and quad down. Like I've never seen one from my quad. Yeah. And like I said, it is a backpack hunt because everyone I've got, like if you're 500 meters, kilometer from the quad, like you're not dragging it back. No. Like it's so thick and all the fall down and everything. So it's everything's, you quarter it up and throw it in the pack and come out. It's nice that you don't have camp with you.
Yes.
But still, like last year, that big one that I managed to track down, I weighed my pack when I got home, and I had a 119-pound pack.
That's brutal.
Did
you bone him out?
I did, yeah. Yeah.
See, my first real blacktail I got in the mountains, I didn't really know what I was doing. And I don't even want to hazard a guess at what that pack weighed. I boned them out now, obviously.
But that was all my gear too. Like that was what my rifle and like what I had strapped on my pack. In those conditions, and like everywhere I go, I have crampons with me. Like, it's so steep that like without crampons, you get away with those micro spikes. But the second you get any snow, they fill up with snow, and then you're just falling. So I have like full on mountaineering crampons that are always in my pack when I'm hunting blacktail.
That is a great tip, man. I took those in the woods for my goat hunt this year for the first time. But I've never taken them blacktail hunting with me because I used to be in forestry. We'd have to wear corks. So I've hunted in those a few times, and that was certainly nice. Although they wouldn't really do you much good in winter because like the micro spikes, they would just they would fill up with snow. I think the thing that people don't recognize is the amount of persistence blacktail hunting teaches you. Like I can remember watching videos of guys on YouTube and they're like getting depressed because they haven't seen an animal in a day. And it's like my biggest blacktail, which is nowhere near your biggest blacktail, I put in 25 days that year. And it was the only deer I saw.
Yeah.
25 days over a course of like 2.5 months. We're talking like late August to like late October. And good days. Do you know what I mean? Like ball busting days, trail camp, like everything. And I saw one deer the whole time. And it's like, you got to keep convincing yourself to like get up and go hunt. And I think your point about the trail cameras, just at least giving you confidence that there are deer in the area, is such an important point to make, because it's one of the only animals where you have because the trails are so fine, they're not patternable. So you're not finding big heaps of fresh sign everywhere. Like when you're in elk area, there's elk are here. Like you don't have to see an elk to know there's elk around. Blacktail are completely different. And I think it's hard to kind of overemphasize how much that helps your psychology. Like when I know I'm in an area with animals, I'm fine. I'll just keep putting one foot in front of the other and going until I find something. What really starts to erode your confidence is like, oh, I mean, maybe there's animals here. Maybe there isn't. I don't know. Maybe I'm wasting my time.
Yep, for sure. Absolutely. And then with the blacktails, and as I've learned it with them, it's huge on any animal, is like the wind. I remember I used to I'd be like, oh, well, I'm quite a ways. I can probably go this way or shortcut and you just, sometimes you'll have, like you can see fresh sign and you never see a deer.
Right.
And you're just like, the wind is just going the wrong way. So playing the wind with the blacktail in that big, thick timber, like it'll feel like there's no wind. So then it's super hard. So I actually buy those disposable vape pens and put it backwards. So you blow through it and then you get the smoke, like the vape comes out of the other end. And then you can see exactly which way the wind's just super gently going, and make sure you're always going into it.
That's a really good idea. I have the wind checker that I use for when I hunt elk. Does the but
same again thing. In the pouring down rain in the blacktail, it always gets clogged up and you can never work.
Right. I didn't even think about that.
So that's why I was like, man, this thing it's always clogged, soaking wet in your pocket or whatever, right? So
yeah,
that's
a great idea, man. While we're on the topic of like boning out and stuff, do you got any tips for people, or like, because you talked about how poor a job you did of processing your first mule deer, and now you're probably like a scientist with how specific you are about everything. So what's that actual process been like, and what kind of things would you pass on to people or newer guys getting into it about just field processing? Because that's something I just don't think people think, especially if they're whitetail guys, because they're used to like pulling it out on a sled and hanging it up. And it's like, all of a sudden you're by yourself, and a big blacktail you're not going to haul them up into a tree by yourself.
Right.
And so, talk about that a little bit.
For sure. It definitely all started on YouTube, right? Like learning the gutless method and what was included in that and how to do that. And just watched it. And I think I had an app at the time that I could like download or something. So I remember I'd have it on my phone, and I would like watch it. Just like, if you do something on your truck, you watch a YouTube video and you just pause it and you do that part, and then you pause it and you do the next part. Kind of like that. And then like, there's some awesome videos on YouTube of the gutless method. I don't know whose it was, but the one was of an antelope, and the guy just went through everything, and then right down to the deboning. And I just watched it tons of times and tried to, and then when you get out there, like, try and just do the exact same way. And once you do it once properly, you just like, even like the deboning, like you just find the seams in the meat. So you're not actually cutting the muscle, you're just pulling it apart and finding the bone and pulling it all out and everything. And a big thing is learning how to do it by yourself. Like if you had that third hand, like just hold this leg, like you're bending with your knee and trying to, it's difficult, but it definitely takes some practice. But I would just say that research as much as you can.
Yeah, I actually had an iPad with me for the first couple deer, and I did the same thing as you did. And I forget whose it was I downloaded, but literally downloaded a YouTube video right to the iPad. And I was just sitting there with the deer, looking at a little bit of the video. And then I loved what you said about the seams of the meat, because it's once you get into it, it's like, listen, I don't know what any of this shit is called. I don't. No. It's one of like my notes to myself that I really want to spend some more time. So I know what the different roasts are and where the different steaks come from. I just know what makes a steak, what makes a roast, and what I'm going to grind.
Right.
But even when you're making roasts and cutting steaks, and even when you're field processing, once you get in there with your hands, you're like, oh, this is all very logical. Like it makes a lot of sense. Like you can see where the seams are and you just pull it apart, and then the different roasts kind of fall down, and like a back strap makes a whole lot of sense. Like once you figure out how to kind of lift it up and just kind of chink away at it and it pulls out all clean. Like it's not, you don't have to know technically what you're even doing. You just kind of follow, you break. I like when people use the term breaking the animal down, because I really do feel like when you do it right, it was just a bunch of pieces that were stuck together, and then you just separated all the pieces.
For sure. And I was trying like get your quarters off, get all your big chunks off and laid out. I always have a bunch of garbage bags or snow, or depending like where you are and how it's going. And then once you get everything off and it's cooling down, then you get a little more time, and then you debone everything and load your pack and get ready for the hike out.
So are you a meat shelf guy, or are you like a contractor bag in the bag kind of guy, or somewhere in between?
I'd say somewhere in between. Like I have a mystery ranch pack, so it comes apart. So it's made to have like the meat shelf on the back.
Yep.
And I got some like boned out game bags that I use now. So I like to wrap those in garbage bags, like once they're in the game bags, just so I don't get everything so covered in blood all the time. But no, I definitely like take the bag all apart and get everything kind of in the middle, is in the right spot, and strap everything down as best you can. Yeah, that's kind of how I do it. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. So while we're on the top, let's talk a couple of gear things. What's been your kind of progression let's focus on backpacks first. What's been your kind of progression, and why do you like what you like now?
Yeah, like I said, definitely gear junkie. So I'm always wanting to try new things and, latest and greatest. And I mean, sometimes that doesn't work either.
Yeah.
I got a Kuiu pack. It was the one I used for a long time, and I really liked it, but it didn't fit me that well. And actually I had a buddy, I went and helped him pack out a deer, and he had a mystery ranch pack. So I tried that on. And it was so much nicer than my previous pack. So I ordered one of those, and that's what I've been using for the last 2 or 3 years now, is my mystery ranch pack. And it's, just getting everything adjusted, like learning how to load it and learning how to fit your pack to yourself is huge. Like when I first got it, I'd put like 60 pounds and go do stairs, and then like move make it half an inch longer, and then do it, make it half inch shorter. And like, it's crazy how all those small adjustments just make it carry better once you figure out where it's supposed to be.
Yeah. And that general principle of taking the time to get to know your gear and know how it fits. I've never run a mystery ranch before. I'm a Kafaru guy, but those bags are actually quite similar. And I've heard a lot of really good stuff about mystery ranch bags. The thing I've heard about the Kuiu is that they tend to also be pretty floppy. I'm a fan of lightweight until you start paying a penalty in performance.
Right.
Because I run a Fulcrum from Kafaru, which with my guide lid is like 9,200 cubic inches. Like, it's gigantic. I think my pack and my frame probably weighs in the neighborhood of 7 pounds.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would say like, why aren't you wearing a lighter bag? And it's because, well, when I put 100 pounds in a 7-pound bag, it feels like 80 pounds. And when I put 100 pounds in a 4-pound bag, it feels like 150 pounds. And so I'm going more for like the functional performance of the bag. And numbers are important and I'm going to pay attention to them. But I do find when people take that ultralight, and that's why I'm also a fan of Mystery Ranch, because I think they run that kind of nice blend between lightweight and ultralight. And I think people tend to get a little too hung up on that ultralight end.
For sure. And like I said, I use that same pack for everything. Like I know a lot of guys, they'll want to like get a smaller pack for their day hunts. I have the Mystery Ranch Marshalls. It's the biggest one they make. I just take all those straps and tighten everything up as tight as it can go. And when I go on my day hunt, I use my lid and the 2 pockets on the outside. And if I get something, it'll go on the inside. But I just suck it all down because, I mean, when I'm going out for a day hunt, I could save 1.5 pounds by buying a lighter pack to put on that frame. Then I'm switching it all the time. If I'm going for a day hunt, I don't have any gear with me anyway. So the extra pound, like I don't care about that pound. So I just cinch everything up. And then when I do go on a week-long hunt, I got all the room. Like all the room.
I couldn't agree more. I do the exact same. And it's your Marshall kind of sounds like my Fulcrum. So my Fulcrum has these 2 wing pockets.
Yeah.
And when you fill up the big tube, normally they strap to the outside and they've got a second set of compression straps. But if you just collapse the main bag, the 2 wing pockets fold
right up front.
And that's exactly what I do. I'll put like, let's say my kill kit and a couple other things in the bottom of the main tube. Cause it's like, I know I'm not going to need to access those, but then everything else I need for the day just goes in the 2 wing pockets and up on the main lid. Everything gets strapped down. I couldn't agree more that the one secondary pack I have is for training, because I do like the Outdoorsman's Atlas system to put that Olympic plate
I've seen
on the
that.
back.
That's awesome.
The only problem is, so the first bag I bought, the first true hunting backpack I bought was the Outdoorsman's, they call it the Long Range Hunter. Their frame is the same for all of their bags, but they kind of have the optics and the long range optics. So it's just a bigger and a littler bag. And I bought the bigger bag. And I like the Outdoorsman systems and it's okay. It's just not on the level as far as like a Kafaru or a Mystery Ranch or Stone Glacier also look really nice. I wouldn't mind trying one of those, but they're ones I worry a little bit that they get a little too far to that ultra light end of the spectrum. But there's a lot of people that like them. But anyways, it was an okay bag. But when they came out with the Atlas system, which is essentially just a post that bolts to the back of like their plastic exo frame, it was only an extra $100. So it's kind of a no-brainer that for $100, I could have a second training bag. But if you go to buy it from scratch, you're looking at like $650 Canadian.
Yeah,
and it's like, that's a lot for like, I can just chuck some sandbags in the back of my other backpack. So it's unfortunate that there isn't. I'd like to see without that hard ecto frame though. I don't know how other backpack companies would. What's your answer to that? Do you just use like sandbags or something when you want to train?
So I take, like right now, my pack is completely off the bag. And I either use like the 45-pound Olympic plates, or I just have like a big, like a, like the, I don't know if it's a CrossFit sandbag with a big sandbag with handles on it.
Yep.
And I take the pack right off and then I just strap that. It has some straps on the actual frame.
Sure.
So I just strap it like as tight to the frame as I can. And it stays there pretty good, but having that post, it would be easier. Like it takes more time to strap something onto the frame.
Sure.
But on that Mystery Ranch, it stays on there pretty good for all my preseason training.
That's awesome. And then I guess once you get into season, you kind of don't worry about training so much. So you just dump that off, put the bag back on. And by then you're hiking around enough in the mountains. Once like summer shows up and you're doing trail cams and all the rest of it, you're getting enough exercise just being out there. As
soon as the snow comes down enough, which
always surprises me how long it stays up there. Like I do quite a bit of Squamish stuff. I haven't in the last year or two just because I've been too busy and I've been doing more of the big hunts. But because I'm downtown in Vancouver now, I tend to hunt Squamish over Chilliwack. And I'll think I'm golden. It'll be like the second week of June. And I'll get halfway up the FSR. And I'm like, fuck, man. Like there's 2 feet of snow up here still.
Yeah. And it's always that bug because you want to go check them. Because I leave mine out all year. So when I'm done hunting, like it's interesting to see what comes through and how much snow they actually push through. Crazy. And you try and get up there and you end up, I always go way too early.
Always. That's what we do though. That's Steve Isdall guy. he's an interesting character. I will say that, but like that dude gets after it, man. He's already been out checking cams and all the rest of it. And it's like, I know where he lives and I know where he's hiking into. And it's like, that is not nice territory at this time of year.
Right. Yeah. He's got some, tons of content that he shares for sure. And I would say like definitely the biggest influence or whatever to Blacktail is like having all those videos. And like, once you start getting interested and then you watch those videos, you're like, oh, wow.
That changed everything for me, man. So I'll tell the story of like my first real blacktail. Cause the other thing was I lived on Haida Gwaii for 2 years. So I've shot a shitload of Sitka blacktail. And I just want to be clear with people because there's a Sitka blacktail, which is an island deer. And then there's Columbia blacktail, which is what we hunt here in the lower mainland. And it's tricky too in BC because it's the same Columbia blacktail that they hunt in Oregon and California and even Washington. But like the California blacktail are giants compared to, they're like mule deer size. I'm like, they're like 160s and shit. It's like, Jesus, man. Like, yeah, our blacktail are not like, what would you say? Like a 140 blacktail would be a giant, wouldn't he?
Oh, yeah, like all the deer. So BC, the book is 115 to make the BC record book.
Yeah,
I've never broken it. I've got three bucks that are within 2 inches of it.
Oh,
so again, like it's not about getting your name in the book, but that's like it's like I want to break this.
Getting that close, right? Yeah, that's okay. You're allowed. Yeah,
when you get that close, and you're like, this is the one, and it's not. But a good buddy of mine shot one this year that's got to be in the 140s, and like the buck he shot, I've never even seen one like that on trail cam.
Oh.
Like I don't have any trail cam pictures of these huge bucks that like they're so rare and few.
Crazy.
Those massive blacktails, but
I think there's you got to have the bug because it's the same. I like hunting coos deer, and like they're not. If you don't know coos deers, like they're not impressive at all. And I feel the same way about blacktail. Like if you show a blacktail to if you show a giant mule deer, like one of those crazy Utah mule deer, you can show that to anybody and they're going to be like, holy shit, man, that thing's crazy looking. You show a crazy blacktail to somebody and it kind of just looks like an average deer. Oh. But when you have that blacktail bug and you get like those chocolate horns and they're like, he's got the mass and you're just like, I don't know, man. There's just something that's, even though it's not objectively impressive compared to a mule deer, there's just something different about it that it lands differently for me.
If you know what a blacktail looks like,
yes,
like I've got mule deer, even like a small 4-point mule deer just doesn't look like a blacktail. They're just different. Yeah. And same as what you were saying with those huge muleys, like those bucks I have a couple inches out of the record book. You take a mule deer that's a couple inches out of the record book, and that thing is huge.
Yeah.
And again, that'd be like a 168-inch mule deer. Like everybody, no matter who you show, would be like, that's huge. And a lot of blacktails are 3 points. Like I've got a couple of 4 points. But it's so rare. So rare.
The funny thing is, when I was on Haida Gwaii, I've never shot a Sitka over 2 points, like 2x2.
Right.
And I've heard of more, but I don't know if it's a genetic thing. I've seen maybe 1 or 2 pictures, but like I've seen thousands of Sitka blacktail and I've never personally seen one that had any more than 2.
Yeah. I know a guy that fishes at one of the lodges on Haida Gwaii, and he said he's seen 1 4-point in like the last 20 years.
One thing I want to go back and do, because I always just road hunted, to be honest with you. I did some elk hunting in a pretty remote part on Haida Gwaii, and I did shoot a blacktail back there 1 year that was like a bush blacktail, but the rest of the Sitka were all like, literally like we used to just drive to work and I'd have my rifle. And like, I remember one day driving to work, saw a deer, shot the deer, got it, threw it in the back of the truck, drove back to a bridge, tied it up, hung it over the side of the bridge because it was like, had the nice cool air coming with the river, went to work for the day. And like, there's nobody on the end of the island, right? Like, and then just came back, pulled him up off the bridge, threw him in the back of the truck and went back to camp for the day. But one of this kind of like bucket list ideas of mine is I'd like to go back to the island and do an alpine hunt, because I do think there is some remote areas on that island that have to hold big deer, because there's bears for sure, but there's no wolves. Predation is relatively low, and there's a lot of easy kill deer anyways for those bear. And I bet you could have a really cool mountain hunt and probably see some big ass deer, but the ground is not it's a shitty place. Like, I don't know if you ever spent any time on North Vancouver Island, but we're talking like 12-foot salal and just veg, like to the point where you're like swimming through it. And it's just a shitty place to be. Yeah. I do think though, that How to Hunt app that Steve Isdall had with the videos was a game changer for me and Blacktail hunting.
I think there is some quartering and gutless method videos on there as well that you could download it and then have them with you. And he kind of goes through all that as well. So
yeah, that was a great.
He's got that one for the big game one. He has a sheep section too. I actually had that with me when we went on our sheep hunt, because he shows like, this is an 8-year-old ram. This is a 9-year-old ram. This is a 10-year-old ram, and like shows you. And there's one on 7-year-olds too. So like you can be sitting there looking at a sheep in the spotting scope, and then you actually have like a reference kind of.
Yeah.
But like, again,
I think that's a great tip to load your phone up with, or take the app or load your phone up with pictures of like known aged rams.
Yes. Oh, and a buddy of mine, he guided up north for sheep. And before that first year before my hunt, I probably just drove him nuts, because every time I saw a picture of a sheep, if it was on somebody's wall, I'd take a picture of it and then go into the edit, and I'd like draw lines where I think there's rings. And I'd be like, is this ram 9? And he'd be like, no, that one's 10. Oh man. And they're like, just constantly. He probably got so annoyed with it, but.
That's awesome. That's the level of obsession that I think you need though. Like I know you're going to chalk a lot of it up to luck, but to go out your first sheep hunt and bring something home, that also doesn't happen by accident. You clearly did your homework, and I think it pays off. I mean, what do they say? Success is when planning meets opportunity, or whatever it is. I think it's important to get obsessed to that degree, especially with these big hunts. Like, that's what surprises me. People go to get ready for like these big mountain hunts, and they kind of half-assing it. And it's like, you got a lot of money on the line. You got a lot of time off work on the line. And then they run into something they don't expect. They end up coming out early, whatever the case may be. I think you kind of owe it to yourself in the mountains to kind of do your homework and be prepared, both physically and mentally.
For sure. Yeah. And we like always heard from multiple people that have done sheep hunts and haven't gone. They say the year you start sheep hunting is the year your sheep is born. Right. So like we went in with that attitude, and like I was blown away, just like so pumped to see sheep. Right. So like, it was an unreal trip, and there's probably not many people that get that lucky on the first one. But it's definitely a bug. And once you do it once, pretty hard not to do it again.
Yeah, I couldn't be more excited this year. I'm absolutely stoked. And I'm surprised. I mentioned this on one of my last podcasts. I'm kind of with if I was to write a list of the things I like about hunting, and let's just remove all the actual killing of an animal, I'm writing about a sheep hunt. Yeah. Like that really far back there, kind of remote, super physically challenging, almost being stranded to a degree, crazy vistas and landscapes, the kind of exploration, like that's sheep hunting. Yeah. And it was kind of funny. A lot of times on an elk or a deer hunt, I'm actually finding it difficult to like find what I'm looking for. Because especially if I'm hunting down south in the States, like it's kind of hard to get more than 4 or 5 miles from a trail, because then you just start getting close to the next trail, and it's hard to get that truly isolated. And listen, that's still difficult in BC, especially given what type of sheep season you go out there, because there is a lot of competition, and finding, I would say that's one of the hardest things to do. And you can't predict who's going to be like, that's what keeps me up at night. I'm like, man, if we spend all this time and energy getting back there, and then there's somebody else got there the day before, like that's the type of shit that tends to keep me up at night. Right.
But then with sheep too, what we found, it's like, it's so hard to see them. Like, you don't know how good they are at glassing and how patient they are and how much work they're going to put into glassing. They might like not even see them. And like you said, with the type of hunting, that's what like I noticed when we were up there. Like, you're waking up, you're having coffee, you're just talking because you're looking through your spotting scope. Whereas when you're like deer hunting, you could be closer to the game, and you're kind of like always hunting. And I found with like sheep hunting and my last goat hunt, it almost feels like you're not always like have to be so switched on. Like when you're in your camp, you're still like glassing for sheep and you're still looking for them, but it's like a totally different way. and hunting something that's not nocturnal was unreal. Like deer, they move at night. Now you're trying to hunt something that sleeps at night. It like makes sense.
This is another reason why I like bear hunting. And don't get me wrong, I love deer hunting and I love elk hunting, but there's this like stress to it, especially with like morning and evening, because like if you're not on the trailhead at dark and if you're not on your glassing knob before the sun comes up, like you are missing the most productive like hour to 2 hours of the day. So you always have this like mild anxiety as soon as you wake up that you're fighting the clock. Whereas when I go bear hunting, I don't feel that. It's like it's a much more relaxing kind of vibe to me. I mean, you're still working and there's still effort, but it doesn't have that same anxiety to it.
For sure. And I've never had good luck bear hunting in the mornings.
Never. My buddy Lander, who runs Primitive Outfitting, doesn't let his guys go out before 3.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, no, you're just going to fuck it up. You're just going to blow them out. And anywhere and not only that, the big guys aren't coming out till night anyways. So any smaller guys that you do see, if you go to make a play on them, you're just going to blow out the area for where the big guy would have came out tonight. So he's really firm on that. And after being up there with him for a couple of years, you almost feel a little bit lazy, but it's like, there's just no point, man. Like if I'm not going to be effective, I'll stay back at camp and just do some work.
But that's what the big bears, they're lazy too. They're sleeping 100%. In and not moving. So yeah.
Okay. So let's do this because I want to be cognizant of time here. I'd love to hear about your goat, and the fact that was a draw tag, I think would be a great way to segue into us closing out with a few LEH tactics.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been putting in for goat for quite a while. And like the way the draws in BC work, it's pretty tough to draw any of the tags. Like I know people that have put in for a draw that's 1 in 3 odds for 9 years and never won it. So got super fortunate, won a goat tag, started scouting, went up there a couple of times when I was like muley hunting and put some time in the zone, kind of figuring out where we wanted to go. And then when it came down to the hunt, I kind of waited till October, let the goats kind of hair up a bit.
Yeah.
And me and a good buddy of mine went in and picked a mountain, and we were glassing from the bottom, and we spotted some goats. So we knew like there was some up there. And it was just grueling. It was probably the hardest hunt that I've done to date. Like no trail, like most of them, but it was so dry. There's no water. So we planned to stay up there for 3 nights. So I can't even remember how much water we packed up. We were like 65, 70 pounds packs just going up because we had so much water. And I always use that app, Fat Maps, and they have a thing on there where you turn on flats, and it kind of shows you where there's some flat spots. And the mountain we were hiking up, there was one tiny spot, and I was like, if that's not flat, we have nowhere to camp. And we got up there, and there was a flat spot. So like, as we were kind of going up, we were glassing, and right when we found that flat spot, we glassed and we spotted some goats. So we hiked all day to get there. We literally turned our packs upside down, dumped them out, hiked this ridge, found a group of 3 billies, and got the goat the first night. Like, we were going to be there for 3 days, and it was unreal. And again, same with like the sheep. I did not want to shoot a nanny. I was like, I don't care how big the billy is, but
which is almost kind of even tougher than a mature ram. Like I was stressing out about that on my sheep hunt this year. Like that takes an eye too. And even people who've been doing it for a while, especially them older nannies, like it can head fake you for sure.
Right. And I would say we're super fortunate in the times that I spent scouting, found quite a few goats. And there was multiple times where I had like maybe 5 or 6 goats like in view on different mountains. So I'm going with the spotting scope and like picking apart, like, okay, that one looks like this, and then find one that has a kid. So, it's an nanny, right? And you're like, okay, that one look, and then, this thing, like big blocky shoulders, like just all the definitions of like what you read about.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't imagine you hear the guys going on a goat hunt and they see one goat.
Right.
Like having only one goat and nothing to compare it to, that'd be so hard.
That was my experience. Like I did see a big group of goats on the second day, but the one goat that I almost had a chance at, some fog kind of rolled the wrong way. There was nothing else. Like he was the only one, and he was just slowly picking his way, or she. I mean, I think it was a he. But if I hadn't got to spend more time, I would not have pulled the trigger. Like I was not at that point where it's like, I'm confident enough. And even though you're allowed to shoot a nanny, it's still like, it's that thing where it's like, you let your lust get the better of you. Like we all know you're not supposed to shoot a nanny. So it's like, just don't, you know what I mean? Like, especially with mountain goats, I was shocked at more than any other animal. And I don't know the exact science, but because of how long they're with their kids, like there is a profound impact on the health of the herd by taking a nanny. Like it's not a one-to-one thing. Like you are severely depreciating the kind of reproductive capabilities of that group of goats by taking out a nanny.
Right, for sure. And again, it was lucky. We watched the Billy. He went over a rise like right away from us. And with the spotting scopes, like we had confirmation that it was a Billy. So yeah. So, that helped. And like I said, we definitely had lots of scouting trips, and we made a couple of plays while we were doing like the scouting trips. And then just, it all worked out, and we went to the spot and the goats fed up kind of where we were hoping they would, and managed to take a nice Billy.
That's amazing.
And it's crazy how strong they are. Like everybody talks about how tough goats are, but like I have the footage, like I have a phone scope. So I set it up on my spotting scope. First shot was right behind the shoulder, like right through the lungs, 300 yards away. And it shook a little bit, and then it kept eating. It didn't run. It didn't nothing. It just kept eating. So I shot it again in the shoulder that time, and then it spun around, and then it just kind of walked and fell over onto a tree. Like it never ran. It never, it was like it just didn't care.
That's crazy. It's funny. I've heard the exact same thing. Like that was the one piece of advice I got from a couple guys is like, just keep reloading. Like, I don't care how confident you are that the bullet went on the right spot, until the thing is laid down and stopped breathing, put more rounds in them. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was crazy how big they are too. Like
right.
Got super fortunate, and it was a good Billy. It ended up going Boone and Crockett, just squeaked in. It didn't make BC book. And it's one of the animals that the BC book is actually higher than Boone and Crockett.
Okay.
But BC has I don't know the exact number, but it's something like 80% of the world's population of goats is in BC.
Really?
It's a huge number like that. Like, don't quote me on that number, but it's a lot. So that's probably why the book is that way. But how heavy it was. Like me and a buddy trying to get it out of that tree, and it was massive.
That's badass. I can't. I've got the goat fever from this winter, as I was saying before the podcast started, and they're just they're a weird animal, man. Because you tell somebody you're going goat hunting who doesn't understand mountain goats, and they're like, oh, that sounds really weird. Like they're picturing like Coombs, like the little goats on the roof, and it's like no. And then you show them a picture, and people are like, what the. Like that thing is crazy. I always say they look like bodybuilders.
Yeah.
Like they have giant shoulders and chests, and they look like a Yeti or something. They're so freaky.
The big Billies. Yeah. And you can see that when I was comparing them, saw some, probably they were quite a bit bigger than the one I took, like just the way their stance. Right.
Yeah.
And with goats too, it's more of, cause I hunt for meat. I enjoy all the meat. It's all awesome. But I can go to the store and buy meat if I had to. But the goat hunt, it's like the adventure. And it's almost like sheep hunting is there, but then goats are one level up, where they live. Deer are in the nice alpine where you're going to find a stream to camp by. And then you got sheep hunting where it takes a lot more effort. And the goats, where they go, we spotted a bunch of goats, and we just, the one mountain, we just called it No Look Mountain. Cause it doesn't
don't even bother looking over there. Yeah.
No, there's a goat, but there's zero way that I can get there.
Yeah.
So just the adventure of the goat hunt is definitely what, I just can't wait to do it again. The hike was brutal getting in there. It was sketchy. It was just awesome.
Yeah. That's the best, man. Okay. So let's switch gears here and talk LEH. And like I was mentioning before the call, everybody's got their own strategies. I don't want to tell people units and tag numbers and stuff, but I'll start off. And I think what we're going to try and do is just give people some tips to maybe shift how they're looking at the LEH, and maybe how they can increase their odds of pulling a decent tag. So the one thing I'd mentioned that I'd picked up on this year is that as an archery hunter, there's really very few benefits to being an archery hunter in British Columbia. At the beginning of the call, you actually mentioned one of the only benefits is that late season whitetail. archery only. Like that's a legitimate archery season, that the animals are easier to kill, and because it's the rut for the whitetail, and there's no other rifle hunters. So you don't have the additional pressure. But most of the archery seasons in BC are like September 1st to 9th for blacktail. Like that doesn't even, there's not even any blacktail around. Like why isn't it like October 25th to November 4th? Like if you're going to give me 10 days for archery only, it should be in the middle of the rut. Like that's the whole point about kind of increasing the difficulty. Anyways, I'm going on a rant. I'm always on the lookout. And the other kind of only true archery benefit is island elk. There's a couple of like really great rut hunts for Roosevelts on the island. And I noticed this year they added some archery only moose hunts. And the tip that I want to give is look for kind of alternative sources of pressure in the units that you're applying for. So some of the archery only units also have a high number of rifle, and they're not archery only units, but some of the archery LEH tags are in units that also have a high number of rifle LEH tags. So you are going to have guys shooting guns while you're trying to kill something with a bow. And that screwed me over twice last year during elk season. And I was like literally going to bed one night. I had elk bugling on the other side of the ridge, like 400 yards away. Like my morning is set. I'm going to bed a happy camper. Gunshots go off, arguably past legal shooting light. And my whole area is nuked. Gone. Wake up to a ghost town. No elk, no nothing. And listen, I don't like, everybody's got a right to hunt, but coming with a bow, I'm trying to find areas where there's no other dudes with rifles. So anyways, a long-winded tip. Just take a moment and also look at the open seasons that overlap. Like, is your LEH just for a different class of animal? Like, for instance, is it giving you access to a 3/4 curl when there's also going to be a shitload of over-the-counter full curl hunters? Or can you kill any buck and there's still a shitload of over-the-counter 4-point only buck hunters? So just when you're applying for your LEHs, take a look at both the other LEHs for that species and unit and the actual regulations for over-the-counter tags. And just remember to look for alternative sources of pressure in your same unit, which might also come from different species. Like if there's no moose tags in that unit, but they've got an over-the-counter mule deer tag, that could also increase pressure and change animal behavior for the unit.
Yeah, for sure. And the draw odds in BC, like they don't ever really get better. Like you hear about the guys in the States where they get their points, and sounds like that system has its flaws as well. But, and I mean, the good thing is every year is a fresh chance. My kind of tactic is like for my elk, I always put in for one on the island. 10 years ago, I picked a zone that I heard has good elk in it, and I just keep putting in for the same one. Odds are like 1 in 120. So I really have no plans of ever actually getting to hunt elk there. And then just like kind of with the odds, like I think a lot of people don't realize that when it tells you the odds are 100 to 1, that was last year's odds. So you could, like, sometimes the odds flip flop because people see that. So they put in for the one that had 50 to 1. And then next year, that's the one with 100 to 1. And the other one was 50 to 1. But without having points, there's no real tactic that I have. I pick my LEH hunts and then hope for the best. And then when the draw results come out, then I'll try and plan my whole season around that. Like, we're lucky in BC where there's always something to do. It's not like if you don't draw, you're not going hunting that year. But yeah, I just kind of wait till they come out and make a plan.
Yeah. And I feel like that's the only reason I don't bitch too loudly about, because I am very frustrated with the BC draw system. I think it's terrible and lazy, but the fact that our over-the-counters, the options are so numerous, it's kind of like, it seems like a shitty thing to complain about, but I would prefer, and you're right, with point creep, the point systems have just as many flaws to them as well. So like there is no perfect system. I think another tactic that I would recommend to people, and this is assuming you have a more flexible lifestyle, but sometimes it's hard to decide what animals to apply for when. Like you could basically apply for any species between September and October. So how do you know which ones to apply for? So what I do when I'm planning out my year is start with the species that only exist during certain portions. Like, for example, you're not going to hunt anything else in August other than sheep. So if you want to go in for a sheep tag and not worry about it overlapping with something else, it's probably best to look in August. Same thing with goats. For me, I like winter goat hunting. I shouldn't say I like winter goat hunting. I'm sure hunting goats not in winter is better, but it's the only animal during that time of year that I can go hunt other than bison. So that's the other thing is I'll kind of sandwich my year. And I'll say, okay, well, goat's going to be in February. So I only have to look at units that have goat in February. And then I'll kind of reverse engineer everything else back around that and try and think of like the year as a whole. But then sometimes it's just a waste of time because the draw odds are so low that like you put all that time and effort into it and you don't draw anything anyways. I mentioned earlier, it's 6 years I've been putting in for the BC draw. This will be year 7 and I've never pulled a tag whatsoever. Have you gotten anything else other than your goat?
Nope. That was the first tag I won.
Yeah. Crazy.
And it's funny, like you said, to like plan your year. Like I have a sheep draw I put in for every year. I'm putting in for the goat and the elk. And I'm always like, there's a chance that you could win more than one. And then then what do you do?
I know.
And even I joke with my wife that like, I'm scared to win that elk tag because that is going to cost me a fortune. Now I'm going to be taking the ferry to go set up trail cameras and scout and like learn the area. I know nothing about it. So like you have a 10-day season and a once in a lifetime, literally you'll probably never draw it again tag. Like you got to go all in and it would be I want to do it, but it's going to be a lot if you ever get that opportunity for sure.
Yeah, it is almost more of a daydreaming exercise. Like I basically spend a week or two like fantasizing about what all these great, and then they come out and you didn't get any of them. And then you just like start back over and daydream the next year, you know?
Right. And you worry about like, what if I got my sheep and my elk?
Yeah.
But that's probably never going to happen. So you don't have to worry about it. But
well, and I have a sheep hunt over the counter planned with 2 friends this summer and we're going in August. So I put in for Kamloops Lake.
Yeah.
Cause it's like impossible. And I'm like, if I'm going to cancel on anybody, it's going to be for Kamloops Lake because nobody in their right mind, like I could phone any hunter in British Columbia and say, I have to cancel my hunt with you. I drew a Kamloops Lake sheep tag and everybody's going to be okay with that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. And you wouldn't have to. I mean, you can only take 1 sheep a year, but your sheep hunt's going to be early season, probably, right?
Yes.
August. And then the Kamloops Lake one, that's a later in the year. But your luck would you'd have the Kamloops Lake tag and then you'd have a huge 10-year-old ram in front of you up there.
I wouldn't even go. I wouldn't even want the
with the Kamloops Lake one, it's kind of like, obviously I've never done it, but you hear of guys like, if you put in the work, like your chances of getting a sheep are very, very good.
I think I don't want to use the term slam dunk, but also Zone A, the odds this year are 1,500 to 1.
Yeah.
I think it's the single least likelihood to draw tag in the regs or in the LEH. I can't think of anything else.
Yeah. Pitt River elk is up there, but I don't know if it's over 1,000.
Yeah. 1,500, man. And then Zone B, which is like a little piece of Kamloops Lake. It was, depending on the season, one season was 760 to 1 and the other one was 500 to 1.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh, that's the other one I put in was for Spence's Bridge. Because that's the other one that's like, those are to just be like, that is an impossible sheep hunt. Like the only way, unless you have 50, 60 grand to fly to the NWT, the only way you're going to get a sheep like that and get that type of a hunt is by pulling a tag like that. So part of me is like, well, why not? You know what I mean? Like the odds are already so slim. You might as well just shoot the moon.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, man. I want to be cognizant of time, so let's wrap it up. I feel like there was a ton of territory that we didn't even cover. So what I'm thinking is maybe late summer, let's plan for like a full gear chat because you'll be kind of ready for your hunt. Maybe either we could do it before I leave for sheep because then I'd be all like late July. I'd be ready for sheep. the LEHs would come out, so we'd know what hunts we were planning for, and we could both kind of do like a bag breakdown.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Of what we're going to run this year for our different hunts, and people really find that stuff valuable. So let's kind of put that on the books, and we'll like late July or something like that. We'll try and get together if you're down.
Yeah, no, that sounds great to me. And of course, by then it seems like the gear list is always changing, and there's things I didn't even know I wanted to upgrade until I read or research about this or that. So yeah, that'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah, there's always an excuse to go spend more money.
Oh, it's crazy. And they're like, okay, I'm done. They're like, well, I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah. All right, man. That was awesome. I want to thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. It's been great.
All right. We'll chat soon.
Okay. Have a good one.